Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world's most exciting classroom. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We are racing to the holiday season. Many classes have already started their break, but there's still a few hanging around with us. We thought we'd squeeze in one more event for classes in Australia and New Zealand before the end of 2024. Roughly around the second week of January, when classrooms start getting back into action, we will continue with our live events. We still have a big chunk of the world to cover as we cross the Pacific again, cross the Atlantic again, hang out in Africa, and then make our way all the way along the coasts of Africa and Europe before we wrap up our journey in July of 2025. So let's get right into tonight's event. Let's see where the ship is right now. So bear with me for a second while I share my screen quickly. There we go. You should see it now. Let's make it a little bigger. There we go. So you can see that the Oosterschelde has left Hobart and has made really good time, already having crossed the Tasman Sea and almost at the coast of the South Island of New Zealand. So I believe that they will be checking in shortly, and then they're going to make their way along the coast to Christchurch. And then you can see if this massive journey still ahead of the ship, all the way to the Falklands. It's going to take about 7 weeks in some of the crazy waters. So that should be interesting to see how often we can connect and what the passengers and crew are going through on this journey across the Pacific. I've got a few little things here. As always, you can see some of the pictures and videos that are uploaded. You can see the ship is getting nice and festive as we prepare for Christmas. Some trees on the ship. Very cool. And then we'll get Josh when he joins us to talk a bit about the weather. Here's a little clip of the weather. It's pretty big. They've got the netting up. It's pretty important. You can see it going right over the railing there. I can see why they managed to cross pretty quickly. If they had winds like that, it would have been pretty handy for that sailing. So I'm going to come back from that screen share, and we will go to the ship now where we have Josh hanging out. Let's bring Josh in. Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Joe, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good. It looks like you're already in the festive spirit for us today. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Excellent. Well, you are pretty incredible, Josh. You have been on the ship quite a bit off and on since it departed. I caught up with you in Australia, which was great to see you and spend a little time with you.
Yeah.
Since then, you've had Darwin Leader Project in Tasmania, and now you are making your way to New Zealand. And I think you said tomorrow you're going to kind of check in. I think everybody will kind of get their papers stamped, and then you'll make your way up the coast.
Yep. So we arrive in a little place called Bluff tomorrow morning, I think, which is right on the tip of the South Island of New Zealand. And then we'll clear customs there, which is really nice because then that gives us the chance to spend the next week just cruising around, stopping off at some different islands and some different bays along the way before we need to be in Christchurch on the 26th.
All right, there we go. So how's this leg been so far? I know, I was surprised when I looked at the map today to see how far you guys had made it. What's the sailing been like?
We've had it all. We've had it all except a nice calm day. So we've had no wind, but big swell, lots of wind and lots of swell. So it's been wet and wild. We've been rocking and rolling the whole time, basically. But yesterday was a particularly interesting day. Really strong winds, big waves, as you saw in that video. You couldn't step outside without getting absolutely drenched immediately. It wasn't even raining, but just because of the sea spray firing over the boat, it was intense but fun.
Yeah. Any wildlife on the journey so far, or has it been too rough
lots
on deck? Yeah.
No, lots of birds, lots of nice birds. We've had some painted petrels, which I know Grant is excited about, following the boat for the last few hours, and lots of albatross flying around as well, which is nice to see.
Yeah.
I think there were some dolphins at the beginning of the voyage, but I was still in adjustment mode when they showed up, so I didn't see them myself. I was in bed.
All right, gotcha. Is Grant back on board now, or is he catching up later?
No, Grant is somewhere. I think he might be in his cabin filling out his bird logs or something, but he's around, so he's doing his bird counts every day.
Yeah. Cool. Well, just remind people as well that if you visit darwin200.com and you use the map, there's a special button you can click. It's a little bird symbol, and it will kind of highlight areas of the map, and you can see some of the bird lists that Grant's been filling out and adding as the ship goes on. So you can see some of the sightings that they've had on board the Darwin 200. Awesome. Well, what's the plan? You're going to make a few stops along the way up the coast of New Zealand. And then I guess Christmas on board. You guys planning a little celebration?
Yep, hopefully we'll be on anchor for Christmas. Last Christmas we were stuck in the middle of some pretty intense weather, so Christmas was cancelled last year. We had it a few days late, but hopefully we'll find a nice base somewhere where we can drop anchor and have a nice chill Christmas. And then the guests will disembark on the 27th. But some come back. We've got a handful of guests on this leg that are getting their sea legs ready for the Cape Horn voyage, the 7-week one. So most are getting off and going their own way. Some are spending the New Year in New Zealand and then getting back on board on the 2nd.
All right. And then Josh, so you get a little time off the ship after Christchurch. What are your plans for the coming weeks before you're back on?
So I'm going to...
I think we had a little pause with the connectivity, but usually the Starlink. Oh, I think we got Josh back.
Yeah. Where did I stop? What do I need to say again?
You were just about to start, and then we lost you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I've got a car rented. So I'm going to hang out in the South Island of New Zealand for a couple of weeks until the 18th, I think, and then I actually get to go home for a couple of weeks, which is nice. I haven't been home since June. So I'll get to catch up with some friends and family, and then out to the Falklands to get ready to do the Falklands to Cape Town leg, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, that is going to be an awesome leg. So Falklands, already an amazing place. Maybe Tristan da Cunha if the weather allows, which is pretty much the most remote inhabited island on the planet. South Georgia, which should be a penguin fest. It should be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm super excited for South Georgia.
Yeah, and then wrapping up in Cape Town in Africa. That's going to be pretty good. That's a pretty good leg.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be cold and it's going to be rough weather, but I think it's going to be worth it when I'm stood on the Salisbury Plains in South Georgia with 200,000 penguins around me.
Yeah, well, you have to tell. Well, obviously, we'll steal you for some world's most exciting classroom events. You have to tell me all about it when I catch up with you in Cape Town.
Yep, definitely. I'll have lots of pictures to show you. All
right. Well, Josh, before we let you go, I hope you have a great holiday season. Say hey to the crew. Say hi to Grant.
Thank you.
Say hi to Riley. He's our Explorers Club researcher on board on this leg of the journey. And if you're renting a car, I hope you get out to the fjords, Milford Sound. And all along the coast are pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'm definitely planning on doing that. And also doing some penguin hunting as well. I want to go and find some little penguins and some yellow-eyed penguins.
Excellent. Good stuff. Otago Peninsula, where you're heading, is a great spot. That's where I saw the yellow-eyed. So I think you'll pull it off. All right.
Great. Thanks a lot, Joe. Well, happy Christmas. Have a great New Year. And I'll catch up with you in 2025.
All right. Sounds great, Josh. Great to see you.
All the best. Bye.
See ya. All right. Great to catch up with Josh for a couple moments there on the ship. As you saw from that video, they had some pretty wild weather yesterday. They've crossed the Tasman Sea, and they will be making their way along the coast of the South Island of New Zealand, making their way to Christchurch. All right. Well, we have a great guest who's going to hang out with us tonight. She is hanging out in New Zealand, which is nice and convenient for what we are planning to do over the next little bit. We are going to spend a little time with Ximena Nelson. So she studies animal behavior at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand. Two animals that I know, or two animal groups that I know she studies. I know she studies an amazing Alpine parrot, the Kia. And then recently I recorded a little segment with her talking about jumping spiders, because her and her team, when they were in Indonesia, observed some really cool hunting behavior in jumping spiders. So she did a little interview with me that we shared with classrooms earlier in the year. So I'm going to bring her in with me right now. Here we go. Hey, Ximena, how are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you. Kia ora koutou, as we say in New Zealand.
Oh, it's so good to have you with us. We have had some incredible guests from New Zealand. Last week, we had someone join us from New Zealand Conservation, and he shared the work he's doing with the kakapo. So the another parrot species, highly endangered. So we really enjoyed that last week, and we're excited to get to meet you and learn a little bit about the work that you do.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I'm very pleased that I can do that. Should I just share my screen?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's jump right in. If there's questions, they'll come in via the chat for me, and we'll do a little Q&A after we spend some time with you.
Okay. Excellent. So welcome, everybody. First of all, I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about who I am. Basically, I'm quite simple. I just love animals and I love mountains. And so I got to combine both of those loves with this particular animal that I'm going to be talking about today, which is the Kea parrot, which is one of the animals that I work on. And I think it's pretty much the coolest animal in the world. But anyway, it's called the world's only Alpine parrot. And it is a large parrot, like it's, I don't know, 30 or 40 centimeters, weighs about 1 kilo. And it does hang out in places like this, with glaciers and whatnot. So it's pretty cool to be able to see this sort of green, parrot living in this really alpine environment. They do actually go down to sea level as well, but they hang out very clearly in snowy areas. But they're also really famous because they're very curious, they're inquisitive, they play a lot, and they are, like New Zealand birds quite typically, are unafraid of people or of things, which makes them really fun to work with. However, they're not that easy to work with because you have to walk up, the hills and the mountains and camp up there or bivvy up there with all your equipment. And Kea, being quite inquisitive and being quite curious and kind of having an innate tendency to steal things, tend to steal the equipment or even break the equipment that you want to use to actually study them. So they are described as the clown of the mountains, and you will see why. So basically, this talk is just kind of to give you an idea of how cool these birds are, and an excuse for me to just show you a whole bunch of really cool videos. So here we've got a couple of Kea, and they seem to be fighting, but actually they're just they're playing. As I mentioned, they are very curious, and that does mean that they're very attracted to novel objects, things like cars. And so they do tend to, there is a bit of conflict with humans because they've got parrot beaks, and with parrot beaks that, are unafraid to approach things, they tend to, cause a lot of destruction. So there is a little bit of an issue there, and yeah, it's problematic, but we are invading their areas. However, all of these things, what I'm trying to get at with all of these things, with all of these traits, these characteristics that these parrots have, they have this just amazing tendency to play that's connected to this, to this what we call neophilia. So kind of attraction to new objects and this lack of being scared of things. It's all connected together with this curiosity that they have. So I'm sure that everybody has sort of come across this. It's known as rough and tumble play in dogs. But can you imagine a bird doing something like this? It seems a little bit weird. But these are not your average bird. So I'm going to show you a clip. It's fairly long. I had to shorten it because it went on and on and on. But this is what Kea actually do. This is rough and tumble play with Kea, except that it's not playing, and I don't know why. Oh, there. I have muted the sound. That car actually has got netting to protect it from Kea trying to, steal all the rubbery bits. So that you can clearly see that they're jumping, one on top of another, and they roll, they offer themselves, up to the other one. It's tit for tat. So one of them, will take the lead, and then the other one will take the lead. So they're taking turns. These are all classic attributes of playful behavior. And you can see that they're trying to, they're continuing the game. So this is what these birds are like. Completely, yeah, so much fun. So it does beg the question, do Kea actually feel happy? Like when we play, we feel happy. And that's one of the things that we're trying to study. Do actually Kea have the capacity to feel, for example, joy or any kind of sort of happy mood? And this is important because we tend to treat people or other animals that we think might have those kind of feelings better. And so actually because we tend to feel an empathy with them. So it's actually really an important question to ask, not just do they feel pain, but actually do they feel joy? It kind of connects them to us. So I'm just going to show you lots of examples of play. So here we've got Kia social play. And this is just a group of juveniles. And they're just hanging out, really. But this one's going to kick the other one pretty soon, like trying to engage in play. So when they're in groups, obviously they play. Here's another example. That one didn't go down so well. But they also play when they're by themselves, and this is an adult, and it's playing with objects, in this case, of course, camping stove equipment. And they don't seem to get bored. This bird actually did this repetitively like this for a minute. And again, playing with objects here. This is actually a student of mine, and that's her shoe. And zero, they are really not concerned about people at all. Now it's unusual because normally it's the juveniles or the young of a given species that tend to be playful.
Hey, those are new. Those are new boots.
But this is an adult female. So completely unafraid of people. In fact, then she went to try and eat the camera. We also find aerial play in these birds. So these birds went round and round in circles, playing with the thermals that were the winds that were there, and they looped around for 3 minutes, just talking to each other. And we saw rough and tumble play before on top of the car. It's a lot more complicated to do when you're on top of a tree. So clearly they do play. They play in all sorts of situations. They play by themselves. They play together. They play as adults. They play when they're juveniles. They play with objects. They play all sorts of different types of play. But how can we sort of associate whether or not that play means that they're feeling happy or joyous when they are actually playing? So in order to actually study this, we kind of have to come up with some definitions. And we defined the fact that we were going to study joy specifically. And we define joy as a very brief, kind of a very sharp, instead of a long-term mood, a sharp kind of spike of woohoo, which is typically driven by an event or something that like an aha moment. I don't know, getting an A+ in an exam, or a piece of really good news, or a surprise, present or something when you weren't expecting it. So that's the kind of thing that we're defining it as joy. And so to do this, we're trying to design a few experiments, one of which we call the windfall experiment, which is essentially we provide the birds with an unexpected prize after a whole bunch of trials in which they have not particularly liked, for example, what they were given. So I'll just show you a clip of what this involves. So basically here we've got a Kia that's going to approach this arena. And inside there are little buckets, and in those buckets, they tilt them towards them, and they're either going to get something boring like a pebble multiple times, and then something really fun and yummy like peanut butter, say on the 8th trial. And we expect to see that their behavior might change, for example, when they get that 8th trial, if it's a peanut butter trial after pebbles. But we can do the reverse as well. So this is how that works.
Good boy.
Good boy.
Okay, so we're just preparing the bird there, and then this is what you see from the camera inside that arena. Here, you can see that there's that little bucket, and in it is a pebble, and the Kia is going to look at that. And it's moderately disgusted at that. And very shortly, it's going to basically tell the researcher, I want another trial. So it's pushing the bucket back. I want another trial. So here's another example. That's an annoyed Kia. And then here it finally gets the good stuff. So how can we measure whether or not this Kia is joyous about the fact that, or particularly happy about the fact that it got peanut butter? Well, we can do things like, for example, measure the temperature. So there might be some changes in the temperature of the bird. So we've got a thermal imaging camera here, which I'm holding in front of the Kia. And in that image, you can actually see that I'm looking at the eyeball, the temperature of the eyeball. And we can see changes in temperature of the eyeball. But we can also look at things like what they vocalize, what their vocalizations, how they talk essentially. Do they make any particular calls that might be associated with play? And so we know a little bit about their vocalizations because of work that I did in a much younger years. And we know that Kia actually do have a particular vocalization that's associated with play. So you can see that actually on the top there in pink, it's the only animal for which there is a loud kind of laughter-like vocalization. And this is what it sounds like. The only bird, I should say. It's kind of a cool sound. So you can actually, if you go back to some of these playthings, you can hear some of these. They're called warbles. So these birds seem to be in a really playful mood. I think that's because there's fresh snow on the ground and it's sunny. So one of the things that we're looking at is the effect of weather, like particularly if it's been cold, if it's a beautiful sunny day, we all feel happy after it's been raining or it's been miserable for several days. I think Kia do the same thing. Here's some more. And those are all Kia that are playing aerial play. And we've actually done an experiment in which we played them a recording of this warble call and then recordings of other particular calls or even of their own, like different types of Kia calls or even calls of different birds. And we just measured their playful behavior. And we found that actually during the warble call, they actually had more playful behavior. So the warble triggered playful behavior. It's like a contagious thing. Like as soon as they hear a warble, they start playing. And this is actually the experiment. I'll just show you. So that's a Kia responding to the recording from a speaker of a warble call. So just a couple of final slides. I want to just point out that Kia are not just all about play, but they are also a really important part of the alpine habitat. So we also studied their ecology and their natural behavior. And we found that looking at seeds excreted, so from Kia poo, we found that actually they are the main dispersers of alpine plants in the country. And they eat almost all alpine plants. As you can see here, they're eating this particular alpine Dracophyllum. It's actually a subantarctic species. And they eat the fleshy fruit, and the seeds go through the gut passage without being damaged. So they're not seed predators, and then they poo them out wherever they've flown to. And so therefore they disperse these plants. And without Kia, then the alpine plants have a serious problem dispersing. Finally, all of this leads to the question, how smart are they? And they are known to be really, really smart. And it's thought that maybe it's because they live in this unpredictable kind of alpine habitat. I'm not sure I believe that, but they are very smart. So here, this is just some other tests that we do. And here the birds have been trained to look at, or essentially to track a black peg, and they've got an orange peg, and they get rewarded for tracking that black peg. And in this particular example, the first one gets it wrong. So this bird has got to track the hand with the black peg versus the orange peg. And it got it wrong. So it got no reward.
You're looking.
And when it tracks it, whenever she gets her hands above that plexiglass, I guess you'd call it, has to tap the hand. Now she's doing some tricky stuff. She's like maybe crossing over her hands, maybe moving the pegs between hands. And the bird still has to work it out and then return the black peg for the reward. And it got it right that time. You can see it more clearly here. It's focused on it. It's really, really paying attention. There was a hand swap there. Got it right. Exchange for a reward. So they're very, very smart, and they are very, very fun to play with. And with that, I am happy to take any questions about these animals or any other questions that you might have about New Zealand.
All right, very cool. I think they're really cool birds. I remember going along the fjords on a little road trip, and they'd be in the parking lots and hopping on the cars, and you could definitely see they were trying to work things out, especially when you were having lunch. They were trying to figure out how they could be involved in your lunch. But we resisted the urge to feed them because, not the right thing to do to feed the wild animals. But you could definitely tell they were trying to figure out what they had to do to change our minds. Very cool. Yeah. And I really like the video of that warble and how those two immediately just went into play mode. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Actually, in the past, I've had other people tell me, they've played the warble call from their cell phones when they've seen a kea just like hanging out in a tree or even on a light street light in obviously Alpine towns, and the kea just starts like tap dancing. It's just all alone, but it just starts tap dancing.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, I do have some questions starting to come in, so let's go right into a few questions. The first one that I want to ask you about is the human conflict. You showed how that they were curious. And so the student is wondering, do they run into problems where humans, maybe do things they shouldn't to try and get rid of them?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And the answer is yes, it is illegal. These are endangered birds, and they've been protected since the 80s. But that doesn't mean that they don't occasionally get shot by angry people. And it's definitely, it is a problem. We can't stop the fact that kea are, in fact, kind of too clever for their own good. We are encroaching on their habitat, and we're leaving all sorts of interesting things there for them to check out, including food, which things like chocolate will kill them. But we leave rubbish bins and cars with rubber and, stuff that you can tear apart, which is fantastic for a parrot. Yeah, so there's a problem. And we haven't found a solution. We're working on it. Actually, we're working with trying to put smells that might be repellent to the kea. But so far, I have tried a lot of smells, and so far, kea just interested in anything new. So
yeah. So Peter's wondering about the experiments. Are there ever days when the parrots are just like, we don't feel like participating, or are they always on board?
If it's too hot. If it's too hot, we don't bother testing. And if it's miserably rainy, that's not so common in Christchurch where the captive kea are. Don't get a whole lot of rain. But yeah, we're getting into the hot season now. It's quite miserable today, but we're getting into the hot season now. And so it's much more sporadic when we can test, because if it's above 28 degrees Celsius, they're like, yeah, no, this isn't much fun. We're just going to go and hang out in the shade.
Okay. Question here about the young. How many do they usually have, and how long till they're adult?
So they lay 2 to 3 eggs. You usually would get, under normal circumstances, if there weren't any predation, which there is a lot of in New Zealand, unfortunately, you might expect to fledge 2 chicks. So that means that 2 chicks would come out of the nest, and they leave the nest actually really early in the spring, almost in the winter, actually. So there's still a lot of snow around. And those fledglings hang out in groups of like lots of different families, and they're usually looked after like in a kindergarten or in a creche by one adult, often a male, like for the whole valley's chicks. And they get into a lot of trouble because they're very mischievous. And they take about 3 to 4 years to become, 4 years to become sexually mature. How long they live in the wild, we don't actually know. It's possible they live up to 70. We know that they live above 30, 35, but we just don't know.
Yeah. So is that a problem? Is there like, you know, we see the really colorful macaws and things like that in the pet trade. Is there something like that for the Kia, or, you know, New Zealand being kind of smaller, more isolated, maybe it's not a problem?
Yeah, there were, and I mean, the pet trade in Europe for these guys is apparently quite a big thing, and I guess they go for quite a lot, but they have to be bred there, and they can no longer bring them out from New Zealand. I would imagine that there is a black market trade, but it'd be hard. These are not easy to hide, these animals. But yes, there is a pet trade out there for them. Not so much. I mean, they're obviously colorful, and they do have some beautiful underwing color. But they're just fun. But they're also very, very, very difficult to keep because they require constant stimulation.
Yeah. So we have a question about predators. We learned about New Zealand 2050, so the goal to get rid of the invasive species. But are there any natural predators of the Kia?
Excellent question. The answer is no. There are no natural predators. There might have been before. There used to be, about 500 years ago, it went extinct, an eagle that was about 3 meters long, huge, called the Haast eagle. And it's possible that the Haast eagle, which had talons the size of, actually the claws on the feet of these eagles were the size of my middle finger. But I don't think that the Haast eagle really would have been interested in Kia, because Kia would have been too small. The Haast eagle was eating things the size of much larger than current ostriches. So there were these large ostrich called moa, which were much bigger mostly than current ostriches. And that's what they ate. So Kia would have seemed like not even a peanut to them. So I don't think they've ever had natural predators. I think that's one of the reasons they play so much.
Okay, fair enough. When are you in the field next?
I just got back from some time in the field about 2 weeks ago. Next, I don't know. I'll probably be going. I mean, I'll certainly be going to the field sometime this summer. But we're also running tests with the animals in captivity every day. Today is our last day of captive animal testing for about a week.
Okay, very cool. Well, I think the last question that we always like to kind of ask when we get to steal some of our speakers' time is a little bit about, you know, inspiration. So you talked a little bit about kind of a love for animals, but is there something that drew you specifically to the Kia, or we know you study the jumping spiders as well?
Well, to Kia, I mean, as I said before, I do love mountains and I love skiing. And when I first moved to New Zealand, I used to go to these ski fields, and the Kia were always around. And, you know, it was a race to try and get at my gear before the Kia did, so instead of them stealing my gear. And so I became rapidly, you know, fell in love with these very cool birds. But I'm just generally really interested in animals that have characteristics, I guess, which seem to be quite clever. That can problem solve, that can solve problems that seem quite difficult. And the jumping spiders, believe it or not, fall in that category. So I think that there's a commonality between Kia and jumping spiders. Not many other people see that.
All right. Very cool. Well, Ximena, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. The ship will be in New Zealand for a little bit. I don't know if it's close to you, but maybe you'll be able to, if it is, maybe you'll be able to see the ship.
I mean, when it gets to Christchurch, it'll be just over the hill.
Okay, cool. Well, I hope you're able to see it. It's a beautiful ship. You're doing really cool work. I really enjoyed when we got to spend some time together and you shared some jumping spider stories with me. And I'm really glad you shared ideas with me tonight, because there's a lot of great birds in New Zealand, but they were definitely some of my favorites. They have real personality.
They do.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Have a great holiday season. Yeah, and enjoy, I hope, a little bit of a break coming up.
Okay, well, thank you. And yeah, thank everybody who's watching. And yeah, hope you're enjoying your time here in New Zealand.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Okay, so we have a little bit of time left in tonight's event, and what I wanted to do when I caught up with the ship a few weeks ago in Sydney, I took a little road trip about 2 hours north of Sydney to a place called Port Stephens. And up in Port Stephens, they have a koala hospital there. So we were able to visit the koala hospital. We were able to take a tour of the koala hospital with their education coordinator, Sharon. We met some of the patients at the hospital. So obviously, whenever they can, when koalas come in, they want to rehabilitate them and release them back into the wild. But sometimes that's just not possible. And they have to be kept there in kind of a forever home. So they have the ability to do that at the sanctuary there. But most patients there are released back into the wild when they are ready. I want to share you a little summary of our day at the Koala Hospital. You'll see the quality is not crystal clear, and that's because this was originally a live event that we did from the hospital, but it's been kind of cut down to like a shorter little introduction to the work they do at the Koala Hospital. So that's just a little explanation for why the video quality might be not as good as you're used to some of the videos that we've shared in the past. It's because this is taken from a live event using remote connectivity. But give me just 1 second here and I will get the video ready. And then after this finishes, we'll do the answer to our last curiosity of 2024, and then we'll sign off. So here is our clip from our visit to the Koala Hospital.
My name is Sharon Egan, and I am the Education Coordinator for the Port Stephens Koala Hospital. Our Koala Hospital has been purposely built to look after the koala population in the area. And we not only look after koalas now, we look after all Australian wildlife. So we have 10 koalas in our sanctuary who won't be able to be released because of the injuries they've sustained. And we have koalas that are in the hospital at the moment that are being rehabilitated and being given medication, and then hopefully they'll go back out and live in the wild population that we have around here. The main threat that we have to koalas in Australia is habitat loss. And habitat loss can be because of the bushfires that we've had. It can be because of the development, forestry, roads, all of those things. So what we're trying to encourage some of the people around here when they're developing is to leave corridors for our animals. And road accidents are another problem that we have, especially in the breeding season. Our breeding season starts at around August and it goes till about February, can be a little bit later. And the boys are on the move usually to find a mate or a female. And younger koalas that have lived in their area are then pushed out of their area because they're at that mating stage. And so they need to move. And so when they're moving, they're travelling across the road. Where we live here is a beautiful coastal area. So we have a lot of visitors during that breeding season time. And so we're trying to encourage people that are locals, but also people that are visiting to be mindful, especially dusk and dawn, which is where the koalas are out and about. Another problem that we have is it's a lovely place to live, and people often bring their dogs with them, and we have dogs that affect koalas. 70 to 80% of dogs of koalas bitten by a dog are going to die because of different factors. Koalas don't have a lot of fat in their body, and so they get their organs pierced by the dog's teeth. The other thing is the bacteria in a dog's mouth can infect the koala, and they die a very slow, painful death, which is quite sad. Koalas are now an endangered species in Queensland, New South Wales and the ACT, and it is predicted that by 2050 there won't be any wild koalas left in those states. A lot of the reasons, like I said, habitat loss, fragmentation, all of those things. So if we don't look after koalas and we don't develop in a different way and look after our forests, then we won't have koalas in the wild by 2050. So Marie's our longest serving resident here at the Koala Sanctuary. She was hit by a car, and when the car hit her, it hit her head, and so she has suffered sight loss, and she also has a brain injury. So Marie came in as a young Joey, so she would have only been about 12 months old, and she co-lived with another female for a while to get her used to her enclosure. So she's been in this enclosure since 2019, and she has to live by herself, so it makes her life a lot easier being blind. She can still climb her tree. She knows her way around. One thing about Marie is she has a bit of a funny tummy, so we have to be very careful about the leaf that we provide. So she has her fresh leaf for the day. So every koala gets 2 branches per day. And she also has this other leaf here, and it's not actually eucalyptus, it's paper bark. And Marie came from a paper bark forest, so it's a food source that she eats. When it's in flowers, she loves to eat the flowers. They're like her lollies, and she'll search those out. But she'll sit here on the tarp because of her hearing is so good. She knows when the food is brought in, and it's an easy access for her to come to the tarp and get the best tips. All koalas love fresh tippy leaf because that's the juiciest and they have the best nutrients. So this is our main leafing shed. It's been purposely built so that the leaf stays as fresh as it can. We have to cut new leaf every 2 days. There are lots of rules that we have to follow. And today's leafing day. So this is just the leftover of the leaf until the new leafing truck comes in. All the leaf is labelled so that we know exactly what we're getting. And each koala gets 2 branches, large branches every day. And then we have some large boy koalas in particular, and they'll get an extra branch in the afternoon. Every koala, depending on where they come from, the food is chosen to supplement their right diet. So we've got some swamp mahoganies that are only grown on the coast. If a koala doesn't come from a coastal area and they're a little bit more inland, then they don't get that species because they're going back out into the wild. So for the authorities, we have to have 1,000 trees per koala in care to sustain them. So we have 30 koalas, including our 10 up in the sanctuary. So that's 30,000 trees to access because we need the tree to regenerate and we have to keep cutting carefully. We don't go and cut into the national parks because that's for our wild population. So we have our own plantations and we're doing planting all the time, and we'll actually plant on private landholding properties if they allow us to, and then we will go and cut if needed. And if the trees are getting to a certain height, we'll go and cut so that we can keep them to be sustainable. In this enclosure, we have 5 females. It's our breeding enclosure. Out of the 5 females, you have Veronica there, who's had ocular chlamydia, and her eyes have not really healed as well to be released. She still has watery eyes, so she needs constant attention. We also have Isla, and Isla was in one of our local fires, and her nail beds were affected, and so her nails haven't grown back properly. So if a koala cannot climb very well, then normally they get euthanized, but because we have the sanctuary here, she gets to live out her days here and we get to look after her. And she can still climb, she's doing well, but wouldn't survive in the wild, especially during breeding season. We also have 2 young females who were very young when they came in, orphaned, and then weren't able to learn how to live as wild koalas. So they're in here with the other girls. And we also have Miss Sunset. She's blind in one eye, and that was a result of chlamydia infection. So what we try and get the public to do is look out for nice clear eyes and nice clean bottoms for koalas if you're lucky enough to see one in the wild. If you have any concerns, to ring the hospital or a carer from your area so that we can get onto it. They need antibiotics and then they can go back to where they come from. So we have had a boy join the girls in this enclosure recently to try and help our breeding program, and we are happy to announce that we have our very first live bred baby. So Midnight Rose and Blinky were coupled together, and we have Barubi, the baby, and she is probably 9 months old now, and they're in an enclosure away from the public because it is our hope that one day Barubi would be able to be released into the wild. These are our new facilities. We've just had an extension to our hospital wing. So we have a beautiful new area for our vet staff to work with. And this is our examination room. So animals are brought in here. They can do minor operations in the operating theatre, and then some of the other things like putting on a cast could happen at this station here. So when the public comes to visit, they can actually look through our viewing window if something's happening. One of the new additions that we have here is our new CT scan machine. This is our radiography room. So we have a beautiful new machine, and we have X-ray facilities as well as humidity cribs for animals that are really sick and need extra care. Next door, we have our new operating theatre. So we've had lots of animals, so it's not just for koalas. We have birds that often need operations. So we have all of the facilities ready to go. So this is baby Lucy. Her mum Maud had a fractured arm, and we always bring mum and baby in together because Lucy's still having milk from her mum, although she's starting to live away from mum. So they're moving yards today. So these are our rescue baskets. We also use them for weighing, and they're going to move into this yard at the moment. So eventually Lucy will be taken away from her mum when it's time, and she'll learn to live on her own, and then she'll be released. So koalas don't come out of the pouch until they're about 6 months old, and then they'll start to appear at different times, and they have to be papped, which is eating partially digested food to get that gut flora into their tummy so they can deal with poisonous leaves. And then when they're about 12 months old, then mum says it's time to go. They might live nearby, but mum won't let her back into the pouch after a certain time. So you put the basket close to where we want her to go. 9 times out of 10, they'll go the other way. You go this way. Where's your head now? She's so cute. So this is mum. So you can still, she's got a bit of a cast on still. Her arm isn't healing as well as we thought. So they'll, as soon as they go in together, they'll couple up.
Do we know what happened to the arm?
Most likely car fracture. Often we find them when we don't have evidence unless somebody stops and says, I've hit a koala or I saw a koala hit. So sometimes they're fractured and the people just drive off. So, but yeah, so it's healing. She's had a pin in and the pin's been removed, and she's just got to gain strength on that arm, but it's not as easy because she has the baby on her. So she's got extra pressure on her arm. And then she's coming over and she'll just jump on her. She has knocked her off before, so. And Maudie's not as interested in her baby anymore because she's at that it's time to go stage. And then she'll eat from above her head.
All right, so that's just a little kind of highlight of our time, our visit to the Koala Hospital in Port Stephens. They do incredible work there, and it's very necessary work. As you probably saw in the video, by 2050, it's possible that koalas will be extinct in New South Wales due to things like habitat loss, dog attacks, and things like that. And then what I thought was really unique is, depending on where the koala was found, they have to get trees from that area and get fresh cuttings from those trees. Because depending on where the koala is from, that's the kind of trees that they're used to. And when they're released back into the wild, they have to have those trees. So we saw that cutting shed where they have deliveries every few days of those fresh cuttings. And then depending on which koala it is, they get those cuttings from different trees. That's kind of cool. So the last thing we have to do before we wrap up for today is our answer to last week's curiosity of the week. So last week's curiosity of the week, I'm going to play the answer for us now before we wrap up. And actually, I'm just thinking, I think I might have the wrong curiosity queued up from last week. So give me 1 second. I'm going to grab another one here for us, and I'm going to make sure that I play the right one, because we have 2 live events. We have the ones we do for classrooms in Australia and New Zealand, and then we have the ones that we do for classrooms in Canada, the US, and the UK. So we have those 2 different time zones. And I almost played the answer to the Canada to US one, which wouldn't have made a lot of sense to the classrooms who were joining us. So let me make sure I pick the right one here. Oh, yes, I remember which one it is. Bear with me for 1 second. I have to grab it from the DARWIN200 playlist. And then we're going to say goodbye for 2024. We'll have 2 weeks off. And then once classrooms start coming back, we will continue with our world's most exciting classroom events. We'll be going all the way through to July 2025 when we arrive back in the UK. And then I think we have some of the most interesting legs of the journey coming up. There's 7 weeks where we will be crossing the Pacific Ocean and some of the roughest waters on the planet. So it's going to be really interesting for those who are on board and are, kind of coping with and dealing with that. 7 weeks on the ocean sailing. That's going to be something. So we're going to have multiple connections as the ship makes its way across. Hopefully we have some wild videos from the sailing we can share with you. And then I also have the video ready now. So I'm going to share my screen. We'll take a look at the answer, and then we will say goodbye for 2024. So Chrome window, answer. There we go. And I'll hit play and go full screen.
Welcome back. Could you guess what this strange object is? If you remember, last week I gave you a clue that it rattles. Well, believe it or not, this is a gigantic seed pod. It's the pod of a sea bean. Inside each of these segments is a large capsule-like seed. They're so big because they can float on the open ocean for months or even years at a time and can disperse between islands or even continents. Each of these sections detach from the pod and then break apart to release the floating seed. This incredible species of plant is one of the most successful in distributing its seeds around the world. And as a result, seed beans occur in the tropics around the planet. Did you guess the right answer? Let's find out who identified this curiosity correctly.
All right. I am glad that I played the right video. I was very close to playing the one from our North American event, which would have been confusing to anybody tuning in or tuning into the recording afterwards, because we have not had that curiosity yet. But there we go. That was last week's curiosity, a sea bean. You can see it's a massive seed pod, multiple spaces there for the seeds. That was the answer to our final curiosity of 2024. 2025, we'll continue with our experiments. We'll continue with the curiosities, guest speakers, live connections from the ship. It should be a lot of fun. The last thing we need to do before we sign off for today is just say a thank you to our sponsors, our supporters, our contributors, without whom we wouldn't be sailing around the world. We wouldn't have the world's most exciting classroom. The research we're doing on board wouldn't be happening. And then we wouldn't be training our young DARWIN200 leaders to become future conservationists. So we really do need to give a shout out to those sponsors, to those supporters, to those who tune in with us in 2024. Thanks so much. Hope you guys have a great holiday season with your friends and your family. And we hope to see you back in 2025. But for now, we'll sign off with that. Thank you.